As you well know already, I am taking a leave of absence from our asylum, and I will be away for a few weeks. And then, like every mad person who could leave or haven't left, I shall return. Oh, many things have happened this morning. First of those is the fact that we're having to start earlier than usual. Interestingly, the reason why I had to start early disappeared, and I could very well have waited until 10, but I didn't know that until pretty late yesterday. That is one of the things that happens when one gets out of one's comfort zone. Nigeria being my comfort zone, as crazy as that might sound. So I thought that I would be otherwise engaged by 10 o'clock this morning. That's why I had that we should have this early. Now, thing is, I'm not 100% certain if my brain is completely booted at this hour of the day. Usually, the last thing I want to do at this hour is brain work. But hey, is what we got to do. But there'll be a slight tweak this week. I'm not in my own space, and I don't have all the tools and everything that normally have my assistants and everybody. The familiarity of my space. But I'll try and stick as much as possible to our usual format, which would have us talking about the week that was. Yeah. In the week that was, all of our usual madness, wow, display. You had the chairman of Babariga Bank and the current chairman of APC, Aga Ganduje, telling us how beautiful one party is and how his party, having conquered all of Nigeria's problems, have deemed it fit to make governance that much more efficient by having the APC become the vehicle for a one-party system in Nigeria. Well, you remember that I already told you that the politicians have no problems with each other, and that it is we, the victims, who are hopelessly fragmented in most cases. If you haven't seen it already, you better open your eyes. We're already moving in the direction. Not that we were ever far from it, but for once you have a man who is not restrained by morals or appearances. His sole aim is the capture of power. He did it brilliantly in Lagos from 1999. Why would anybody expect that Nigeria will be any different? So what you are going to be seeing will be the unification of the crime families across Nigeria. I say crime families because what has passed for governance in Nigeria is nothing short of crimes against humanity. So when you now see that those who have been largely responsible for the ruination of Nigeria and its misgovernance, the victimization of its people, when you now find that they are the ones who are uniting. So the unification of the political class that you're seeing, let's be clear very quickly, it is a sort of homecoming. When you speak about the APC not being different from the PDP not being different from the APC, and then you have that brilliant Freudian slip by Balablu Bulaba when he told you PDAPC. He knew exactly what he was talking about. So the entire purpose of that segment is to let you understand very quickly that you're not dealing with a people who are in any way, shape, or form divided before now. It was always a function of six and now a dozen. If they were any different from each other, you would have seen market difference, perhaps in development and safety, in governance indices, anything that you would have used to measure governance, you would have found differences across the political landscape, evidencing itself in development in one part, retrogression in another. But what you see is uniform retrogression across the country. So it becomes that much more difficult to speak in any way, shape, or form to any exception existing within the political class as currently constituted. So when you see this cross-carpeting, when you see entire structures of the PDP in one state or the red-capped ones in Kano State, you see them moving around, just understand it is a unification of a class. The class is banding together in recognition of their common interest. So that is the totality of that one. Now, perhaps because I've been away from our asylum, I think days are beginning to fuse now. But what I do remember is that I believe we now have the man known as VDM back home. That happened in the course of the week that was. But here is the thing about that. Just like it was with Bobrisky, so it began to seem with the brother known as VDM, how some people strongly disagreed with what was done to him. Some people justified it on account of the fact that they do not like his person. And this was pretty much the same way that you had Bobrisky's victimization justified on account of his sexual proclivity. You can disagree with a person's sexual proclivity, but agree that the person is being treated unjustly and singled out for unfair prosecution or persecution, as the case may be. This entered his apology when I was picked up and locked up, and a whole lot of people found cause to justify what was done to me on account of the fact that they don't like the things I say, they don't like my politics. But the point missed when we justify these evils, the point missed is that we are actually finding legitimization for what we should be decrying, because it might come our own way someday. That it had happened to someone that we don't like does not mean it will not happen to someone we do like someday. So when you go applauding evil because you do not like the victim of the evil, understand that the day that it would happen to those that you do like or you would have delegitimized your own voice. Your voice should be heard loudest, particularly when you do not even like the person. Now, the problem with the recent gale of arrests and intimidation is that it speaks more to the advertisement of what kind of system we have evolved as a collective. If we are indeed in a democracy, I would imagine that voices of the opposition should enjoy some measure of prominence, because this is practically the way societies who have evolved democracies replicate the same thing that happened in old Rome. Memento mori. Remember you die. The opposition serves to remind the government that it will leave office one day, and that these are the things that those who are dissatisfied are saying. It does not necessarily mean that they would always agree, but it should be taken as a measure of where society is and not necessarily as a declaration of war. That you do not agree with a person should not justify their persecution. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a brand new week. I first of all must apologize that I dragged you up so early, that church is resuming early today. But those of you who are Catholics are already used to it. Sometimes you have multiple masses in the morning. I am not presuming to be your new pope, but it is indeed a blessed day. So welcome to church this morning. And once again, my apologies for the early hour. It may be the last broadcast for a season. I'm supposed to be on holiday, and I do want my holiday. I want my holiday because I need to find a way to retain my sanity And now that I've escaped our asylum, the easiest way to do that will be to step away from having to consider our issues, even if only for a season. But this morning, I've assigned myself a task because as I jetted out of Nigeria, as I've entered the United Kingdom, I've been forced to look at what has been battered on account of ideas. But you see, not all ideas endure. This morning, I've chosen for myself Nigeria and the stubborn truths. The stubborn truths. There is this song that we had when I was growing up in Ibadan. I'll share it with you and then I'll attempt to interpret its meaning to those who do not speak Yoruba. It says, Ìwọ nìkan kọ́ ló gbọ́n, ìwọ nìkan kọ́ ló mọ̀ye, tó bá gbọ́n tó lẹ́nìkan ò gbọ́n, ìwọ ni bàbá ọ̀bọ. Ìwọ nìkan kọ́ ló gbọ́n. You are not the only wise one. Ìwọ nìkan kọ́ ló mọ̀ye. You are not the only one who is knowledgeable. Tó o bá gbọ́n tó lẹ́nìkan ò gbọ́n, if you are smart or knowledgeable and you claim that nobody else is as smart or as wise as you are the stupidest of all fools. That is a Yoruba proverb. But what relevance does it have with what I am asking us to ponder this morning? I said Nigeria and the stubborn truths. You see, if you take your cogitations from a foundation of truths, if you do not allow the process of cogitation to be destroyed by your inability to embrace the truth, if you have lost the capacity to be objective in analyzing the truth, if the truth has taken on colorations for you, if the ethnicity of the persons involved in your analysis affects the outcome of your reasoning, if their religiosity or non-religiosity, if their prejudices and biases affects your own evaluation of their actions, inactions, and persons, however smart you are, by a process theologians would generally refer to as Ahithophelization, the truths that have gone through the process of your barrier, of your prejudices and biases, are rendered foolish. Foolish in the extreme. That is what happens. Ìwọ nìkan kọ́ ló gbọ́n. There are many truths that Nigeria has refused to embrace. And the rejection of which has assured that instead of soaring as the eagle, we have as a people been chained, unable to soar and fly to our full potential. The number one amongst those stubborn truths, the truth does not respect your prejudices or bias. The truth has no respect for your prejudices. The fact that you would have preferred that the person be a particular way on account of your prejudice does nothing to change the truth of your prejudice or the facts surrounding that truth. Let me share one with you. The stubborn truth says that those who voted Muslim ticket in 2023, not that that made any difference to the outcome. They are fools. That is what the stubborn truth is saying. If you voted for a candidate on account of the person's religiosity in 2023, or at any other time for that matter, you are a prime fool. I didn't say that. Our objective reality says that. Look around the country today. Look around our country today. Look around it. The country is destroyed on the altar of our prejudices, our biases. It is a thing of great pain that in subjectivizing the truth, we became incapable of dealing with what is important, the collective good. The common good became a problem. I'm sorry, I do have a problem with one monkey, but I think I've dealt with that now. Anyway, so the point I'm making is this. The truth does not respect your biases. It does not mean that because you would prefer that the person dealt in a particular manner that they would. You have to deal with the person where you found them. What are their records? You didn't look at that. All that mattered to you was that you were told the person is a Muslim, and because he's a Muslim, it would be good for you. Question is, who is a Muslim? Is it everybody who declares himself one? Who is a Christian? Is it everybody who declares himself one? If these people were really who they say they are, would our country be where it is today? The truth does not respect your prejudices, nor your biases. The second thing, one of the second truths that the truth does not respect, it doesn't accommodate your lies. The stubborn truth does not accommodate your lies. You can't lie in the face of the evidence, the clear evidence, and expect the truth to walk away simply because you told your lies. I'll give you a case in point. First, nobody died at Lekki Toll Gate. Someone told us that. And then, no, it was only one person that died at Lekki Toll Gate. Oh, yes, and then it became true. And the goalpost kept changing. Someone will say one story in the morning on CNN. Another story will issue forth by lunchtime. Even otherwise intelligent men in pursuit of the erection of a lie began to find camcorder at the toll gate days after the massacre. The truth is not accommodating of lies. However well you polish the lie, whoever it is that is telling the lie, the stubborn truth simply does not accommodate your lies. If we don't see what you did in darkness at Lekki Toll Gate because you turned off the lights, the Judicial Panel of Inquiry in Kaduna State established very clearly that 430 Shia Muslims were murdered because of Buratai's convoy. That happened in broad daylight. Judicial Panel of Inquiry established. The Shia maintained that closer to 2,000 died. That is the stubborn truth. However long you seek to conceal these things, they are right there in the open space. I am forced to tell us this truth this morning or remind us of this truth this morning because there is a common thread that runs through all the ailments of Nigeria. A complete disrespect for the truth and inability to recognize that the stubborn truth cannot be obliterated by the lies that we told ourselves. You know, the truth does not respect our lies, and it is very, very stubborn. However long we may delusionally demand that the lie become the truth, it does not happen. Another one of those lies that the stubborn truth will not allow to live. Hausa Fulani. What is that? Exactly what is the meaning of that? There is no ethnicity in Nigeria called Hausa Fulani. So why have we continued to tell ourselves this lie, and what is it that it is promoting? Exactly what is hiding behind that construct? Through federalism. If it is federalism, it is federalism. What do you mean through federalism? What kind of federalism has the National Assembly legislating on local governance? What federal system has a single body to conduct elections from local government, and this is being done in a parliament largely unelected, unreflective of the people? And we are building atop these foundations of lies, but the stubborn truth will not go away. No federation does these things that we are doing, and we are institutionalizing, and we're lying to ourselves that we can have them endure. How? It does not happen. Herders farmers clash? What do you mean by herders farmers clash? The herder is coming with his cattle and he's got guns. The farmer is on his farm with his farming implement. The farmer is in his home, in his village, sleeping in his bed with his wife and his children all around him. And the one you call a herder comes in with guns and depopulate the place and kill the people. You come as a government, you bury the dead in unmarked graves, and you allow those you call herders to resettle the land, rename it, and you tell all kind of lies. But the stubborn truth will not go away. What kind of lies do we tell ourselves, and how do we even expect that these lies will endure? How? How? Time proves all lies. Eventually, every lie reveals itself with time. Every day, you see the lies that have been told being unraveled in real time. The truths that had been covered being revealed. How are these things happening? Look, in 2022, in the lead up to the 2023 election, a bunch of renegades gathered themselves together and said Afenifere had become factionalized. And so they have this faction in Akure that is supposed to be Afenifere. We looked at them and we knew that with time will prove all lies. Afenifere is known for what it is known for. Those in Akure are known for what they are known for. So today, you have a situation where the renegades of Akure, who presumes to speak in the name of Afenifere, they are busy endorsing the failure that is in Aso Rock, telling you they are speaking in the name of Afenifere. They are busy defending the madness of Sheyi, telling you that they are speaking on behalf of Afenifere. Nothing engages them except the things that excite Tinubu. They are constantly doing strip dances for him. Time proves all lies. We needn't say a word before the real people will identify who is who. The stubborn truth does not respect your biases. Look, there is something that we as Nigerians appear to constantly forget. We tell ourselves that because we are Nigerians, it's something exceptional about us, as if we are entitled to our own truth, different from what applies to the rest of the world. As if the standard of the world is different from the one that applies to us. Let me explain something to you. The stubborn truth is that even though we take words from other languages and Nigerianize them, like how bogus, a word for, that means false in English language, became big in our own English. We imagine that because we are entitled to our own English language, we are suddenly entitled to our own standards, and that these standards can dictate to the rest of the world what reality should be. We subjectivize truth in a manner that suggests that we are entitled somewhat or somehow to having the truth bow to our own interpretation. True federalism. We talk about progress even in the face of retardation, in the face of regression. We applaud madness just because it suits us. We subjectifies the truth, constantly calling evil good. And you look across the land and you find that there is a variance between our pronunciations and our realities. They will tell you Lagos is working, for instance. Question I ask is, who is it working for? Oh, Nigeria is working. That's why people are going to the APC. Who is Nigeria working for? It's working for the rulers. The ruiners of Nigeria are having a party. I posted something yesterday. I said, where justice is not found, or something along those lines, peace also becomes. There is a correlation in my own argument between the existence of peace in a space and the presence of justice. In the absence of justice, you can't have peace. I posted this and I saw multiple persons rightly argue that this does not apply to Nigeria. That even in the absence of justice, peace prevails. There is this conflation of the absence of war, the absence of people demonstrating on the street, causing mayhem, with peace. How can Nigeria be said to be at peace? The level of societal disruption in Nigeria today is indicative of the level of madness that has overtaken the society itself. How can this be lost on us? How? How can it be lost on us that The stubborn truth is that you cannot have peace in the absence of justice. The menace of kidnapping you have in your country, outside of that being pushed by Islamic terrorists, is essentially driven by social inequities. The large pool of recruits available to extremists is also evident of the social injustices, the mass poverty, whilst the people are looking at the rulers living in style. These are the things that are fueling the constant disruption in our society. The stubborn truth is that if you do not do justice, you cannot have peace. Peace is not the absence of guns booming left and right, and they are booming already in our country in most cases as evidence of the injustice that the system has allowed. The guns that are booming on the plateau, the guns that are booming in the middle belt, booming in the forest of the southwest and the southeast and the south are evidence of injustice that has been tolerated by the state, and yet you expect to have peace. The stubborn truth is that you cannot have peace in the absence of justice. Look, the truth respects only truth. You cannot force the lie on the truth. That is simply common sense. You cannot force the lie on the truth. It is impossible. You know, there's something about the truth. It is very stubborn, and it is one of the things Nigerians have failed to understand. The truth is timeless. It is immortal. It may be buried for a season, but the truth never dies. The liar always hopes to outlive the truth teller. That happens sometimes. The liar tells his lies, and the truth teller might not be in a position to respond, probably because he didn't even hear the lie in the first place. But ultimately, as with the way of every mortal, the liar dies, and his capacity to erect more lies in support of the original lie dies with him. In some cases, the lies are self-perpetuating. That happens with some lie. They perpetuate themselves, but they only live for as long as they are confronted with the truth. When when the lie is confronted by the truth, it must die. It must necessarily die. One of my very best friends, Ademola Adeshino Ogunlano, a quintessential truth teller. He translated to glory last August. There were things that we discussed that we both knew. Some other persons, thankfully, also are aware of. About somebody who persecuted him all his life, at least towards the end of his life. And this person will believe that the truth have died and have been interred with Sherubaon's bones. Now, the truth teller may die, but the truth that they tell never dies. It is in the nature of the truth to be immortal. If you told the truth 1,000 years ago, and what you told 1,000 years ago was the truth, not just a fact, but the truth, a repetition of the same truth 1,000 years ends would not change the nature of that truth. So Sherubaon might be dead. The truths he told are alive.
The truths in you remain alive because they are known by others who will declare them when the time comes. So the truth is timeless. It lives forever. It is immortal. And it is for men who are limited in time and space to understand the immortal nature of the truth. Another stubborn truth that Nigeria illustrates on a daily basis. Every day, Nigeria illustrates it. Religion does not build a nation. Prayers build no nation. Men of conscience, women of conscience build nations. Let me share a story with you. In the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, I used to be quite religious and very prayerful too. So I would go to the Redeem Camp for the Holy Ghost service. And when I was done at the Redeem Camp, if you are a redeemed person or you used to go there, you remember that used to be, I think, the last Friday of the month. And when I was done there, I would drive straight to the Prayer City, MFM, and I would spend time there and pray. And it was that back then, the Prayer City was my regular church. That was in the 90s. By the 2000s, I had started attending church closer home. So I am from that constituency, but it also offers me a unique illustration for how religion or prayers does not build any nation. At the time in question, the auditorium at the Redeem Camp was largely made of steel poles and corrugated cover. There were no air conditioners. You couldn't do anything without air conditioning. It was a vast open space, steel struts, corrugated sheet. I don't know what it's like these days. But when I stopped going there, I think around 2001, 2002. So I went back there. I was back there in August to bury my friend, Cherubamo. And it had become a thriving modern city, complete with a cemetery, one that the government cannot even boast of. Well laid out roads. Obviously, you can see that the place is reasonably secure. I'm told they have 24 hours electricity too. If you could replicate that community across the length and breadth of Nigeria, you would have perfection. The Redeemed Church did not build that by praying. The Bible enjoins us to walk and pray. The church prayed, but men worked. Men planned, and men worked. What the Redeemed Church has built within that enclosure in the times between when I used to be there and when I went back there was truly marvelous and shocking. But that is what the human capacity can do when properly harnessed. Unfortunately, whilst the Redeemed Church was building rightly, Nigeria was praying. We did prayer walks. So we've been building the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway since Obasanjo's time. Obasanjo left in 2007. The 2027 that all the politicians are running towards will mark the 30th year since that road had been under reconstruction. If that is how the rest of the world have been
praying and expecting infrastructure to appear because of their prayers. China will not be where it is today, neither would India or the Emirates or any of the countries that have evolved and developed whilst we've been praying. The United Arab Emirates is as Islamic as it gets, and I doubt that you're going to be any more Islamic than the Saudi Arabia. But those who are raising to take Nigeria to their Islamist Republic of Afghanistan do not look to the Saudis or the Emiratis or the Gulf Arabs or the Egyptians for their own inspiration. They look to Kabul. They look to Kabul, where we are told to pray. The stubborn truth is that a country that is prepared to spend 90 billion to subsidize Hajj, only God knows how much they are spending to subsidize trips to Israel, Jordan, in the name of Christian pilgrimage, does not have money for scholarships abroad, even for courses that it has no competencies in. The stubborn truth is that countries are not built like this. Simply not done. It is simply not done. There are many stubborn truths from which we daily run. But there is one with which I'll end. And even in the midst of my broadcast this morning, I've had to deal with it. I've had to deal with persons who believe that Nigeria is better divided. Rightly so, when they come with the logic. It's actually next to impossible to argue with the truth of their grievances. But the truth is stubborn, you see. The truth is stubborn. He has no respect whatsoever. The truth has no respect whatsoever for our biases or for our prejudices. So in the absence of the truth obeying our biases and prejudices, what does it tell us when we begin to look at those who have insisted that Nigeria must be carved up into what they believe would be the utopia that will serve their interests? Let me show you something. The truth is that Africa must unite if we are all to survive. Africa must unite if we are to survive. That is the stubborn truth that makes your utopian dreams exceedingly stupid. I will remind you, the population of China is approximately 1.4 billion. One country. The population of India is approximately 1.4 billion. One country. The population of Africa is approximately 1.4 billion. 54 countries. 54 custom union. 54 immigration point. 54. Look, to go to some African countries, I have to fly out of Africa before I can come back into Africa because of the air services agreements that are completely non-existent. But we sit in Nigeria, haven't failed to manage our diversity, haven't failed to confront ourselves with the truth of our situation, and we take the easy part and demand that Nigeria should break up so that we can now have that utopia. Let me say something to you. Just so that we are all clear.
I do not believe that the Nigeria we have today is sustainable. It is not even desirable. I'll be the first to concede that the Nigeria we have today, we implode, is already imploding, and it will die if we don't do something urgent about it. So let us be clear that this is not a situation where I am denying what is obvious to all of us, that this Nigeria is not sustainable. I've been shouting about this for years. I was one of the first to start putting draft constitutions as individuals in the public space, explaining the exact problems that we have as being structural. If you have the right set of rules governing relationship in a society, and the enforcement of the law is even-handed, it becomes possible for disparate persons to live together at peace. But with the lies upon which Nigeria has been erected, the many lies that we have told ourselves institutionalized and turned into law, like for instance, the one where they are currently turning local governments into autonomous units as if they are federating entities. These are the lies that we need to confront as a collective. I need us to understand there are 56 officially recognized ethnic groups in China. 56. The Han constitutes 900 million of the 1.4. A people known as Shen, I don't know if that's how they pronounce it, there are only 2,200 of them. But Chinese laws are sufficiently robust to protect the 900 million and to protect the 2,200 Shen. It is about the rule of law holding together the fabric of a society that is not as homogeneous as you would like to believe. China has 302 living languages being spoken actively within its border, and only 70% of the people speaks Mandarin, in spite of the centuries they've had to integrate. The only reason they are able to live together as one is because they have evolved laws that recognizes the equality of human beings. India has 705 ethnic groups, speaks 125 different languages. They have managed to stay as one because they've found a way to build equitable, egalitarian societies, or at least they are working towards them. There are enough reasons and bases for the separatists to demand what they are demanding, and I will be the last to argue against the genuineness of the grievances. But as Yorubas will say, gbogbo wa ò lè sùn ká kọrí síbì kan náà. Those who demand the dismemberment of Nigeria can't argue against them. But I must be clear to my own conscience and point out what I'm pointing out to all of us. Yes, Nigeria needs to change. Yes, Nigerians must be treated with decency and as human beings under the rule of law. The vote of the Nigerian must count if he is to be deemed a citizen. There are multiple challenges that must be overcome if Nigeria must be preserved, if a Nigerian nation must be battered, and if the Nigerian must be treated as a citizen. I am not blind to these challenges. I am not blind to them. We cannot all reason the same way. Remember the song with which I started this sermon? Ìwọ nìkan kọ́ ló gbọ́n. ìwọ nìkan kọ́ ló mọyé, tó o bá gbọ́n tó o lẹ́nìkan ò gbọ́n, ìwọ ni bàbá ọ̀bọ. You are not the only one who is wise, and you are not the only one who is knowledgeable. If you are wise and you think everyone else is unwise, you are the most foolish of all. What makes your argument sound or unsound are the truthfulness of your thesis. If your thesis is fundamentally flawed by lies that you have embraced, you will always come up with the wrong answer. I am yoked to the stubborn truth. I may not like what the truth is telling me, but I have a duty to tell it. I know that of all the things I have said this morning, the only one you hear that will stick to your head because you are 100% certain that our problems can only be resolved by dismemberment of the evil empire is that one. But no, that is merely the frustration or the frustrating point that you come to when you've embraced all the lies that the stubborn truth would disprove. I have merely come around this morning to speak to you about the stubborn truths, the truths that we have refused to embrace and that has largely affected our capacities as a people. But I have not come to lament or to wail. Last month, we completed the process of collating the electoral reform bill that we had put together. In the last week, I've noticed that your National Assembly has passed a flurry of bills, which leaves me a little flummoxed because I don't know exactly how that has addressed any of the issues. I also noticed that my dear friend, Randy Peters, and yes, we do collaborate. I noticed that Randy has done some sterling work being in the National Assembly. I'll be speaking with him to find out exactly what is happening there. But do understand very clearly that this is not a place where we come to self-flagellate and to just lament and wail. What I seek to do is to educate, and the education is with purpose. In the midst of all of these, I still believe that it is possible for the will of the Nigerian people to be expressed and to be heard. But it can only be expressed and heard when the person with the franchise recognizes the potency and validity of that franchise and mobilizes behind a demand that that vote should count. So yeah, we have all these problems, but our problems are not unsurmountable. We will continue to work towards electoral reform. How effective that will be is a function of how well you become mobilized. Because at the end of the day, I remain comfortable in the knowledge that we are more than them. And if we are ever mobilized behind a purpose, we will win. It's not just that we can win, we will win if we mobilize ourselves behind purpose. Electoral reform is probably the only thing that we can do to avoid the violence that 2027 promises on multiple levels. The politicians are uniting, but without the people uniting, there will be no changes in Nigeria. The only thing that would happen is that the politicians will come up with a formula for sharing the Commonwealth to the exclusion of the people, and that will birth even more intolerable circumstances. Another Sunday morning has come. I've done my own duty. Do yours. All this is not without purpose.
It is to get you to the point where you begin to demand that your votes should count. If it does not count, and if that is not a path that is available to Nigerians, understand that the stubborn truth is that Nigeria will implode in the absence of a valve for the pent-up emotions of the people. It's frustrating in the extreme. I really can't tell you yet exactly what will happen in the coming days. But to answer those who have either mischievously assumed that I have taken off on exile, or those who are just worried that perhaps I have given up on Nigeria and I've taken off, I ain't going nowhere. I'm on break. I need a holiday. But I'll be back. I'm not going anywhere. Can't live anywhere else. You can't even force me out. So, see you soon. In the course of the week, I'll let you know what my decision is, but I do need some time off. And this may be the last broadcast for like a month. Let me just take some time off and regenerate, recuperate, far from the maddening chaos. All right, everyone. Have a lovely week.